I'm Heather Vale.
And I'm Dr. Steve G. Jones.
And we're sitting in Marshall Sylver's mansion, which is how many square feet?
Prosperity Palace is 17,000 square feet.
17,000 square foot mansion. And we are appropriately enough talking about ways that you can become prosperous as well. And now we're going to talk about what Marshall calls irresistible influence, which sounds pretty intriguing.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite topics, actually. I believe that everything that you want that you don't have, you're going to get from other people. And so you've got to learn the skill set of irresistible influence. And it's not just selling. I take it one step further. I believe that influence isn't getting somebody else to say yes. That what influence is getting someone else to ask you for what you're selling. And here's the part that's going to make you tingle. Have them believe it was their idea.
Okay.
And so what's exciting about that is you're really shifting their subconscious mind.
Yeah.
So before I talk about what irresistible influence is and how to get there, I want to do some foundational lessons on what influence is and how it's created. When you believe in what you're selling, you have a moral and ethical obligation to sell it. And the converse is also true. When you don't believe in what you're selling, you have a moral and ethical obligation not to sell it, even if it changed.
Yeah.
Even if at one point you believed in something and then suddenly you didn't, both sides, you have an ethical obligation to sell or not sell based upon whether or not you stand behind the products or believe in those products. I think most...
Okay, well that takes a big weight off a lot of salespeople who, that's the main thing holding them back. Well, I don't really believe in my product.
Well,
okay, get rid of it.
Absolutely, and that's the question. And the question is, why would you sell something you didn't believe in unless it was just for money? And if you don't believe in it and you're selling, you're stealing. So don't do it.
Okay.
And when you believe in something, that comes through. Since in hypnosis we know every single thought has a psychosomatic response, it's those tells when people are communicating, whether they're positive tells or negative tells, that influence people. I get on stage and at my events when I'm offering up my products and services for sale, I sell extremely well. In fact, I'll go so far as to say that I'm one of the best in the world at selling from a platform. And most of my battle is done because I believe so much in what I do. I believe so much in what we teach and so much of what our programs can do for people that authenticity communicates through. So when I see salespeople selling things that they don't believe in, first thing I tell them is you can't do that anymore. It's unethical, it's immoral. So the foundation of influence is always a highly assumptive one, meaning I'm doing someone else a favor when I'm influencing them because I know what the outcome on the other side of that is.
Okay, what if they believe in the product, but they're having a mental block over the price?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, I'm selling a service, I can sell my service for this much, okay, this is cool, this much, and then you reach the part where it's like, no, I can't sell it for that much. Then what do you do?
Well, if it's an individual, if it's the person selling that has that challenge, then the question is it really worth whatever that price point is that was their ceiling?
Okay.
I'll give you an example. Years ago, I got a call from a seminar friend of mine that I didn't know at the time, and he called me up and he said, we want you to come out and do your hypnotic stage show. What would you charge? And I said, that'd be $25,000. He said, oh my God, is that the best you can do? I said, yeah, that's the bottom price, that's the investment. He said, well, what if I let you lecture the next day at my conference? I said, then I'd let you pay me another $25K. And he said, no, you don't understand. He said, what if you came to my conference and you sold something and you got to keep the money? I said, how many people at the conference? He said, 1,000 people. I didn't have a booking during the dates he was asking me for, so my belief is always take a bad gig until a good gig comes along. So I took the date.
Okay.
Flew out to Atlanta, lectured in front of 1,000 people, did my show at night, blew their minds, came back the next day, as I do in my lectures, and I explained how I did everything in the show.
Wow.
And more importantly, how to apply it to their lives. So how to apply it to relationships, how to apply it to building wealth, emotional, mental, physical, and even spiritual well-being. And at the end of my talk, I offered up a $500 seminar. When I offered up the $500 seminar to the audience, 800 people ran to the back to buy.
Wow.
So in the course of 90 minutes, I sold $400,000 worth of goods, which means if I had charged them 50 grand, that's all I would have made.
Yeah.
In essence, I multiplied my income 8 times over. While I was standing there, I'm thinking how excited he must be that I sold so well, and his people wanted my product so much. He's looking at me and he's kind of glaring at me, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I bet he wishes he had taken a split from this, taken some of the money.
Yeah.
And I said, are you upset because you didn't get a split? He said, no, I'll get a split next time. He said, I'm okay with it right now. He said, I'm upset that you didn't sell it for enough. And I thought about that. So the next time I had an opportunity to sell my seminar, I bumped it up to $750. Didn't see any drop. I bumped it up to $1,000. Didn't see any drop. Bumped it up to $1,500. No drop. $2,000. No drop. $2,500. Slight drop.
Okay.
And so I realized that was the price point that most people would vote with their wallets at. So, if I'm the seller, if I'm a person selling, then I want to test what it is. because the cost of something is also a determining factor for the buyer's commitment level. In other words, here's the question. If you're watching this interview for free, maybe you've gotten a sample, or maybe you haven't quite invested in the entire series yet, I bet you'll take better notes when you invest in the series.
Right.
That, if you've got nothing at stake, you've got nothing to lose.
Right.
If you've got something at stake, you'll figure out how to get greater value out. So it's kind of like what we talked about in a previous interview, that kid that wanted to come play the piano at my wedding for $15 an hour. I said, heck no, kid. If you had told me $500 an hour, I might hire you. But immediately, whatever that price point is, there is an immediate attachment of perception to it. Mm-hmm. And so you can underprice yourself, which is what most people do, to the point where people won't buy from you because you've underpriced yourself. I see a lot of online marketers making this mistake, that they offer up so much free content, they offer up so much for so little, that ultimately they have a hard time ever charging for anything, because people say, hey, I could get this information anywhere, and you've been giving it away for free for so long, why should I pay?
Yeah.
It's the same thing in romance. If somebody gets into a relationship or a situation that doesn't lift them up and doesn't build them up, they begin to think that's normal.
Yeah.
I myself was in many toxic relationships before I met my amazing wife, Erica. And I thought that's just how it was. I thought that's how people interact. Yet when I finally was single and I thought I might settle down with somebody for the third time, I said to God, God, give me someone kind. That's all I want. Someone kind, drama-free. And what happened was, because I asked for that, I said, I don't care what form it shows up in. Now, my wife is substantially younger than me. She's 24 years younger than me, if you have any doubts about the power of hypnosis. And ultimately, we couldn't be a better match for each other. At least that's my feeling, and I pray she feels the same way. I believe she does, because I set about going about things in a dramatically different fashion. So I think that Irresistible Influence is, number one, understanding that you must become the authority on the topic. You must not ask anymore. You must tell. You must direct. Hypnotists, we don't ask people to respond. We tell them what they're going to do and respond. And so when you believe in a product, you've got to operate as if you were a doctor writing a prescription. They don't say, hey, would you like to take this? They say, no, take this over, get it filled, and see me in 2 weeks. There's no questions involved. Part of influence is understanding that all buying decisions are based first on emotion and then backed up with logic.
Yeah.
Back to the $400,000 car. Nobody needs a $400,000 automobile or a 17,000 square foot home until you've driven one and lived in one.
Okay.
And so, since all buying decisions are based first on emotion, then backed up with logic, I drive the car, it feels good. I think, yeah, I could pick up clients in this car. Yeah, I could do more business. I could put a picture of this on a slide at the back of my talk and create validation that I'm a success. Your brain starts to justify the reason that you can and need to afford that price point.
Okay.
The other thing, though, the last thought on this is, your subconscious mind is your emotional mind. Your conscious mind is your logical mind. Mm-hmm. Therefore, all buying decisions are based first subconsciously and then backed up consciously.
Okay, so when you talk about irresistible influence, you're talking about influencing the subconscious mind, the emotional level?
What I said as a definition at the top of this interview was that influence is the ability to get someone else to ask you for what you're selling and have them believe it was their idea.
And that has to be on a subconscious level.
It always is on a subconscious level, because conscious is logic and conscious is conversation.
Yeah.
So subconscious is that way of speaking directly to the subconscious mind without the conscious critical factor being the gatekeeper that it is, just setting aside that critical factor and allowing the programs, the suggestions, the influence to speak directly to the subconscious mind so that it doesn't resist.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. I'll give you a quick example if I may.
Absolutely.
So I give this communication to you, and the communication is real simple. I say, refreshing, cool, and delicious. What's refreshing, cool, and delicious? You can
Water,
say
I would assume.
the water, right? What happened just now was I held up my hand with nothing there, and I said refreshing, cool, delicious, and then the water entered the space.
Okay.
So while you're sitting there going, what the heck is he talking about, right?
Yeah.
When I put the water in there, your brain says, oh, I get it. It's the water that's refreshing, cool, and delicious.
Okay.
Whereas if I hold the water up and I say refreshing, cool, delicious, your mind still says, well, prove it. By setting aside that critical factor, having you come to the conclusion, I set aside your likeliness or even ability to resist because you came to the conclusion yourself.
Let me, we're going to do that ending cut. We're going to get in a little trouble. Can we take the label off and do that segment again?
It's a no-name Well,
No,
he can-
there's a name brand showing clearly.
But it's
Well,
in
I
the
just
name.
gave him a good plug.
Steve.
Cool.
That's why he's safe, and
There you go.
that's why he's rich and smart. I'm cool with that.
There you go.
You said rich.
Looks. Okay, cool. And
Is
we're,
it rich?
we're doing this again?
Well, let me give you an example.
Okay.
Refreshing, cool, delicious. What's refreshing, cool, and delicious?
I guess the water?
The water, exactly. What I did just now was I could have held the water up like this and said, refreshing, cool, delicious. Your brain, your conscious critical factor, will still say, well, then prove it.
Okay.
Whereas in the meantime, if you're looking at me like as I'm holding my hand up with nothing there, like I'm crazy, what happens is I say refreshing, cool, delicious. Your brain says, what's refreshing, cool, and delicious? And when the water enters that space, it's called a geographical embedded command. When the water enters that space, you complete the connection. You say, oh, the water is cool, delicious, refreshing, or whatever I gave it as attributes.
Yeah, okay.
So what happens is, influence is the ability to set aside that critical factor and get people to come to their own conclusions without resistance.
Okay, but you set up a little bit of cognitive dissonance for me because you're saying refreshing, cool, delicious. I'm picturing all kinds of other beverages like, I don't know, punch or
Right.
orange
And then he's-
juice
then he's
or
putting
something.
that in
and
the
then he puts the
space.
water and I'm like, oh, it's just water. Come on.
I don't think you consciously thought that. I think subconsciously you thought that's what I was thinking. I mean, you
And yes, you just decided what it was. Just like I just said. You came to the conclusion, you completed that equation
Yeah.
so that I didn't have to complete it for you, which can cause resistance.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, in influence, one of the things that I know is that by now, you know you can be influenced. And by now, you also realize that people watching this want to be influenced. And if by now, the influence that I gave you caused you to go from where you are to being a millionaire or even a multimillionaire, then you would certainly, by now.
Are you purposely? Yes, you
Yes,
are.
I am.
Yes,
I
you
am.
are.
And that which,
mentioned by now.
because your subconscious mind can't spell by now. That's the thing, is that once again, most people don't realize that they're being sold all the time. And either they're being sold for things that would benefit them, concepts, ideas, products, services, or they're being sold on concepts, services, and products and ideas that don't serve them. A lot of times I see the subconscious block for people that want to be better salespeople or better people of influence is that they're afraid to sell. And so they're kind of apologetic. And so if
Because people don't like to be sold to, so therefore they don't like to sell.
which again is a pauper's mentality. I like to buy things. You know, I don't know if you noticed my watch. I'm often asked how much does a watch like this cost, and this isn't actually a watch. This is actually 3 condos in the Las Vegas market.
Wow.
And the thing is, those that are afraid to buy are always afraid to sell. And that's what I had said before, is that psychosomatically, every thought we think creates a physical response in the body. And so if I'm afraid to buy, if I think someone's pulling the wool over my eyes when they sell me something, then I'm going to resist them and go, you're not selling me anything.
Yeah.
The danger of that is what happens is that when I go to sell something, I telegraph the exact same thoughts, which causes me to be less effective as a person of influence. So what I teach people to do is realize that there's one way to win at Monopoly, and that is to buy everything you land on. Halfway through the game, it'll look like you're losing. Halfway through the game, you'll run out of money. And you'll have to mortgage properties, get half their value just to buy more properties. And you have to pay 15% interest on top of that. Except if you do that, what happens is, by the middle of the game, you're out of cash. By the end of the game, though, it's come back to you. You're able to put houses on and hotels on there and collect bigger rents, and you win. Most people understand that that's how you win at Monopoly. What most people don't understand is that's how you win economically as well. No risk, no goodies. As you sow, so shall you. What you plant grows.
Yeah.
And so if you want to make money, you got to plant money. Now, it doesn't have to be actual cash, although often it is. It has to also be value.